Chapter 1. If Larry wasn't the answer, who is? Last time we were here, we asked a question that shook a lot of people. Could Larry Whittaker secretly be Timmy's father? We went through what was publicly known, the timelines, the behavior on camera, the way Larry interacted with Timmy. And when the dust settled, there was one uncomfortable reality. We didn't have proof. Not that he was the father, and not that he wasn't. Since then, something new has been growing in the shadows of comment sections, Reddit threads, and whispered conversations from people who say they live nearby. They say, "Forget Larry. What about Kenny?" Over and over, the same idea appears. Look at Kenny and look at Timmy. They look alike. Uncle Kenny doesn't just look like an uncle. Are we sure that's not his dad? And suddenly a vulnerable man, who never asked for this attention, is at the center of a new internet investigation. A man whose life has already been shaped by poverty, isolation, and inbreeding is now also carrying the weight of a mystery the world wants solved. So tonight we're going to do something that almost no one online is doing. We're going to stop and ask what's actually real. Why do people think Kenny might be Timmy's father? Does the resemblance mean anything in a family like this? Is there any concrete evidence, documents, statements, science, that connects Kenny to Timmy as more than an uncle? And just as importantly, where do the facts end and the rumors begin? By the end of this video, you're not going to get a fake, big reveal. You're going to get something more honest, what we really know, what we honestly don't, and what may never be answered about who fathered Timmy Whittaker. Because this isn't a crime thriller. This is a real family, real people. And the least we can do is treat their story with more care than a rumor thread. Chapter 2. The only facts everyone agrees on. Before we talk about theories, we need to stand on solid ground. There is one thing that every reliable report, every serious write-up, every description of the Whittaker family agrees on. Timmy is the son of Lorene. When journalists visited the Whittakers in Odd, West Virginia, they consistently identified him as Lorene's son Timmy, often mentioning his approximate age and his developmental challenges. On the family's own small online presence, Timmy appears as a child of Lorene. In all of these places, one detail stays the same. None of them name a father. No article, no interview, no official profile, no public record that is available to outsiders says, Timmy's father is Larry, or Timmy's father is Kenny, or gives any man's name at all. The father line is either blank or simply not mentioned. We also know this. Timmy clearly struggles, but he is not as severely affected as some of his relatives. Reports say he was able to finish high school and is more functional than members like Ray and Freddie, whose disabilities are much more visible. In a family where inbreeding and deprivation have caused very serious impairments, Timmy stands out as someone who can navigate the world a little more than most. So here's our baseline. Before the rumors, before the theories, Timmy is Lorene's son. He grew up in an isolated, heavily inbred family in a home that was chaotic, neglected, and watched by the world through a camera lens. The identity of his father has never been officially revealed to the public. Everything beyond that is either interpretation or speculation. Chapter 3. How Uncle Kenny became maybe Dad Kenny. So where does Kenny come into this? In the documented world he's simple to place. Kenny is described as one of Lorene's brothers. On paper, that makes him Timmy's uncle. That's where the official story stops. But in the online world, the story doesn't stop there at all. The shift starts with a single idea. People think Kenny and Timmy look alike. Viewers notice the facial structure, the eyes, the way their mouths sit, the way they move. In a family already known for having very similar faces across generations, the resemblance between these two hits people hard. From there, the questions start. If Lorraine's brother looks this much like her son, could he be more than an uncle? Did something happen behind closed doors? Was there an incestuous relationship between siblings that produced Timmy? You can see how the theory builds itself. The family is documented as inbred. The environment is chaotic, with clear signs of neglect and abuse. The father is unknown. Kenny is close by. They share a strong physical similarity. For people watching from the outside, the leap from uncle to maybe father can feel natural. But feels natural is not the same as true. Everything that connects Kenny to Timmy as a possible father is rooted in impressions and assumptions. How they look, how they're placed in the house, how people imagine the family operates. There are no court documents, no DNA tests. The neighbors mentioned in online rumors are rarely named, and their words aren't preserved in any verifiable form. In the written, verifiable record, Kenny is Lorraine's brother. In the rumor-filled comments, he's a secret father. Those are two different universes. And there's one more problem with the they look alike argument. In this family, almost everyone looks alike. When a community is formed from a very small gene pool, generation after generation, the same facial traits, eye shapes, jawlines, and body types recycle again and again. It's not unusual for cousins, uncles, and more distant relatives to resemble each other as strongly as parents and children might in a typical family. So yes, Kenny and Timmy might look alike. But in the genetic reality of the Whittakers, resemblance is almost a family uniform. It tells us far less than people think. Chapter 4. Why even science might not give us a clear answer. At this point, a lot of people say the same thing. Okay, fine, the rumors aren't proof, but why not just do a DNA test and settle it? On paper, that sounds easy. In reality, it's not. In a typical family, paternity testing is straightforward. A biological father will share about half of a child's DNA. An uncle will share less, around a quarter. The lab compares the DNA and gives a probability. This man is the father, or he almost certainly is not. But the Whittakers are not a typical family. Multiple generations of this family came from close relatives marrying each other, including descendants of two brothers whose children intermarried. Over time, that kind of inbreeding pushes relatives closer and closer together genetically. The amount of DNA that normally separates an uncle from a father starts to blur. Imagine trying to tell two colors apart, but someone keeps slowly mixing them together over many generations. At some point, they're so close that your eyes can't reliably separate them anymore. That's what can happen with DNA in seriously inbred lines. In a family like this, an uncle and a nephew might share enough genetic material that on a basic test, they start to look like they could be father and son. More advanced testing can help, but the more tangled the family tree becomes, the harder it is to draw clean lines between parent, uncle, and cousin, using statistics alone. There's another obstacle: access. After outside attention grew and concerns about abuse, neglect, and exploitation were raised, adult protective authorities stepped in. Some family members, including Timmy, were removed from the original home. Their location and their circumstances are now guarded by privacy laws. That means no documentary maker, no YouTuber, no curious outsider can simply walk in and request DNA samples. Even if you could somehow get Kenny and Timmy in the same room, any testing would require consent, careful ethical oversight, and legal permission. And given everything this family has already been through, there is every reason to believe the system will prioritize their protection over the public's curiosity. So could DNA, in theory, help answer the question of who fathered Timmy? Maybe, but even then, the result might not be clear. And in practice, we are nowhere near that point. There is no public DNA test, no paternity suit, no legal motion, no formal attempt, at least on record, to identify Timmy's father through science. Which leaves us with a hard truth. As of now, the chances of ever getting a definitive scientific answer are extremely low. That's not a satisfying conclusion for a mystery, but this isn't a movie. It's someone's life. Chapter 5. Rumor, Reality, and What We Owe to Timmy. So after all this, the question hangs in the air. Is Kenny Whittaker Timmy's father? Honestly, we don't know. And anyone who tells you they do, without DNA, without documents, without on-record testimony, is either guessing or lying. What we can say with confidence is this. Publicly available information only ever identifies Timmy as Lorraine's son. It never names his father. It never points directly to Larry, or to Kenny, or to any other man. Larry is a theory. Kenny is a theory. Both live in the same space. Speculation built on behavior, on looks, on fear, and on the human desire to make a confusing story feel complete. In the real world, the most accurate thing we can say is painfully simple. Timmy was born into a family shaped by extreme inbreeding and deep neglect. His mother is known. His father is not. And maybe that's where we have to stop. It's normal to be curious. When you watch people whose lives are so different, whose faces and voices seem almost unreal, your mind wants explanations. It wants a name, a cause, a simple answer to the question, how did this happen? But there's a line between wanting to understand and turning real human beings into puzzles we feel entitled to solve. We can keep feeding rumors, or we can accept that some answers belong to them.